Hi, it's lo lovely to meet you. I've been looking at all your beautiful work. I read about how you started off kind of you got into weaving in kind of a really roundabout way. What was the first spark that really got you committed to weaving?
Well, I'm a product of the 60s, and I definitely wanted to go to a commune. And I felt that I didn't have any skills that would make me a worthwhile member of a commune, and I was very insecure. So I decided I needed to get some practical skills. So I was living in New York City, and I started studying weaving. But I did end up, I was on a trip to go to South America, ended up in Guatemala and just totally fell in love with what the Mayan women were weaving. So I ended up in a weaving town, and it's still what I learned there is still reverberating in my weaving life, in my life in general.
Right.
So yeah, because up until that point, I thought that I could execute things, I could follow instructions, but I didn't see myself as a creative person. Right. It wasn't until 1978 that I decided I needed a BFA in order to get an MFA so I could become a textile conservator. This design teacher gave us projects or problems, really, that were unsolvable. There was never one right answer. And I started to understand that even how I got dressed in the morning was a creative act, right? It got me excited. And about by that time, I had decided that I had already progressed so far in the world of weaving. So suddenly this spark about creativity came together with my weaving problems. And I think that, so I would say since 78, really, weaving has been my path.
Wow. And can you explain the difference between what digital weaving looks like as opposed to analog? Maybe we could start with what is the difference between the backstrap method in Guatemala and the loom? Start from
Well,
there.
the backstrap is a loom,
Okay.
and the person is on one side, the actual weaver is attached to the loom and is creating the tension. And in Guatemala, everything was very warp-faced, meaning the density of the warps were so much that you wouldn't even see the weft that made the interaction, right? And then they did brocading, and it depended on the town because every town had its own different method, but essentially you were hand picking through all of those threads to make the design because what was loom controlled was plain weave, which is the basic, you know, ground of a weaving. And then you made all these designs and they were really infinite. So most looms that we use, a floor loom that most weavers learn on, have something called shafts or harnesses. So if you have a four shaft loom, your threading has to be, each thread has to be put on one of those four options. And if you have four options, you have 14 different combinations of lifts. So then a lot of us have eight shaft looms. And with eight shafts, you suddenly have 256 possible combinations of threads. So then comes along CompuDobbies, which are computerized Dobby looms. And the Dobby loom, instead of having pedals, is controlled by either a computer impulse sending it to the loom, or it used to be bars. And each bar can have any one of those 256 combinations. So suddenly you have these CompuDobbies that enable home weavers to have so many more possibilities in their design capability. And then Vibeke writes a grant to create a digital hand jacquard loom. So a jacquard loom allows you access to any one of those, to lift any one of those threads. And that's the basic principle of weaving, right? Is that you're lifting a thread, or you're lifting two, or you're lifting four of them, right? And it's the control of that lift that makes the loom possible. You know, so basically, all the difference between analog and digital is that you now have equipment that can control the lifts. Now, my loom has 880 threads. And if I was having to hand pick through 880 threads for every weft shot, it's going to be very slow. And
Mhm.
weaving is never fast. Weaving is never fast. But with the computerized digital approach, I now I create actually I work in Photoshop on a Mac, and then I have to bring my file, which ends up being just a big black and white file, row by row. It just says what lifts and what doesn't. So it's always 880 wide because every one of those pixels is a thread. And then the only thing the loom is telling it is row by row what lifts. And so the loom doesn't know what color I'm using or what type of yarn or even what the pattern is, right? So
So
does that
is
make
this,
sense?
yes, yeah, it does. It does. So, and you, what was the change for you when you moved to doing digital?
I would say that when I went to digital, it became more narrative because I could now do imagery. So I take a picture with my phone and then I bring it to Photoshop and then I turn it into a weave file. Now I can do abstract work too. And that is just a personal thing where I go back and forth between um, imagery and abstract. You know, right now I'm in a time period where I just look at the world and the world is so beautiful, despite what man is doing to it. It is so beautiful. And I think, why would I want to weave a picture of a tree when I can go out and the tree is so much more um, moving, you know, so much more beautiful. So I really, right now, am much more interested in pattern and abstract imagery.
And would you the jacquard really changed the way that we weaving was done using
Mm.
punch cards, and it was would you say there is a kind of connection between was the Jacob weaving really one of the first computers that a series being repeated to create a pattern?
Yeah. Well, I mean, my understanding, and I'm not a mathematician, and nor am I a, you know, a programmer or anything like that. But my understanding is that Babbitt and Ida Lovelace understood that the grid of weaving was something that was programmable, and that you know, it's very defined that you either lift the thread and it's a warp, or it's dropped and it's a weft. So that's a yes and a no, right? And or a zero and a one, and that's how weaving progresses row by row. And those threads, they basically don't move from that vertical position. So it does seem like, yes, of course, there's that mathematical connection and that someone saw it, understood it, and then obviously has taken it further because look at what our computer, look, I can be talking to you because of all of that.
Your
Yeah.
work has the themes of recognizing artists and adapting to new tools. And do you have a
Yeah.
particular piece that is kind of really simple, it kind of says it all?
Yeah. Um, Well, not really. I mean, I think as a maker, I'm always more concerned with what's next than what I've done. Totally dissatisfied, always dissatisfied. Maybe that dissatisfaction is what keeps one going, right? That you haven't achieved it yet, but you know, maybe the next one will be closer, you know, closer. But I would say that a lot of my work deals with weaving about weaving. And I feel that people, you know, we all wear clothing. We are surrounded our whole lives from birth to death with cloth. But because it's so common, I think we overlook it. And I think that weaving is a magical process. Like absolutely incredible that these 880 threads can come together and they can spell out the whole, you know, artist statement that I gave in a talk. I have actually woven all of the words from one of those talks. Um, or that I can explain to people in my work what weaving is, or you know, how incredible it is. So a lot of my work will be definitions. I'll actually define what is takate or what is samatum. and then I'll have an image in it. And so sometimes I have students come work with me here in my studio, and then I can show them the weaving, and there it is, concrete in a textile, explaining what I'm trying to help them learn to do. So I have done a weaving called information, and a lot of my work recently has been horizontal bands that come together. By doing it band by band, I can weave a small band and then I can look at it and then I can decide what comes next. And so in information, I did a weaving where I started with damask, which is just a two structured pattern. And then I went to maybe weft back, which maybe use, say, three wefts, bringing different combinations of them to surface, to double weave, to takate, to samatum. So as you progress through this weaving, you see all of the different structures. So I think I'm very fond of that weaving.
I was going to ask you about how do you think weaving is represents those different communities or marginalized communities, and what's the cultural significance that it holds?
Yeah. Well, it starts out because it's needed. It's a necessary, like food. You need clothing to protect yourself from the elements, right? I think there is this universality. So, yes, there is this, and that's why weavers can communicate with each other, whether you can speak the language or not. So I could sit with a Mayan woman who did not speak Spanish or English. I didn't speak her language, but I could watch her and I could learn.
So uh, fiber arts is really having a moment right now,
Oh, yeah,
where suddenly we're seeing it in galleries and it's being perceived as an art form rather than a craft. And why are we having this moment at this particular time? Because there's been such a discussion between, fiber arts has never been considered on the same level as the sculpture on the pedestal or a painting. What has brought us to this point where now we're looking at weaving and textiles as an art form?
yeah. Well, first of all, I'm going to say that having been a weaver for more than 50 years, I've seen other cycles of this, and I have seen other times. And of course, I came into weaving at a time like that. The fact that I wanted to go to a commune was a reaction against the greater society. I wanted to make things with my hand rather than go, to Macy's and buy something, right? Also, I'm seeing lots and lots of work being produced today that I think has a nod to work that's been produced in the 70s or the 60s and not acknowledged because these people don't even know that those people existed. So again, we're seeing sometimes somebody being uplifted or praised or honored who that's their work. I'm not, they should be, but there should be an acknowledgement of what came before. So weaving is so physical. You're using your hands, you're using your feet if you're on a floor loom, you're using your mind. It really is body, spirit. um, it's all there. And so I think these younger people are really drawn to it. Now, as a weaver who has really studied weaver, I consider myself a student of weaving. I'm a teacher too, but I'm still a student. There's so much to learn. So, yes, I think these people are hungry for using their hands, using their mind, making something. Um, and it's a wonderful experience. Oh, you're a weaver, right?
I'm like an absolute beginner. Like I'm just still
I'm
struggling
still
with,
beginning.
trying to I set up a loom once and it made me realize I don't think people appreciate the whole process and the complication. Like we don't think about it. We throw our clothes on and we don't think the amount of work that went into this. And the
Absolutely.
process has been lost in a way. So I have
Right.
a really healthy appreciation for it because to create a beautiful piece it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of
Yeah.
skill. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you think this is happening because so many weavers and fiber artists have been anonymous, that we don't know their names. Maybe we know their patterns, but how important is it to really name the artists attached to the weaving and the work?
I am so grateful for all the anonymous weavers that came before me. In one of my weavings, I do have a little cartouche, and I do say in it, gratitude to the anonymous weavers before me. I think that signing your name is kind of egotistical. I do sign my name, so I'm not beyond that. I love that I hope I have achieved some place in my career where my name means something. But when I'm gone, I'm gone. So I do think that the anonymous Coptic weavers, that was a whole movement, right, of people. I think there's much more strength in the fact that a whole culture weaves a certain way. So those Mayan women, like when I say, oh, I know that figure comes from Neiba, it's because the whole town of Neiba in Guatemala, they always weave on the same ground, the same stripe, and they do the same motifs. And you do not see a textile like that coming from Panajachel or coming from Chichicastenango. So I think that this idea that we're individuals and how important I am, I I don't believe in it. I really don't. So I don't know. I mean, we all want to be special. Of course, my work is my work. Will it survive? I doubt it.
Well, I wanted to ask you about AI. How do you think AI is going to affect the crafts and sort of creativity in general? Do you see it as helping or really hindering?
That's an interesting question. I have to admit that I am not really following this whole AI thing. I mean, I turn 80 next week. I know I'm checking out, right? Like hopefully not too soon. I still have a lot that I want to do, but I'm at the end. And so I'm at the place where I can really easily say, that is not my concern. That's good. Though it does sound like it's, already, and I've also got off social media, so I don't see those things. But I would say that the weaving process, a fully electronic loom, does not need a human hand to do the cloth, to make anything. However, it still needs a person to put the threads onto the onto the holder and to thread it through the loom and also to pay attention if something happens, right? So I think the thing about weaving is that AI can help you design something, but it's not going to weave it for you. So people are still going to want to weave. And that's that thing that you asked about before, that people want to touch things. They want to be involved and not, we don't want to just watch things on our screen. So people are still going to weave.
Excellent. And you said in a past statement that getting older is nice. So, what words would you have to say for those who are growing up and aging in this AI tech mediated society?
I think we're so lucky that we do know about being out in the world without our phone. I mean, I'm no different than anyone else. I have my phone right here, right? Um, but before moving back to New Mexico, we lived in Vermont, and we had cell phones there, my husband and I, but they didn't work most of the time. So they stayed at home. But now I'm living in an environment where my phone works everywhere and it's always in my pocket, even though it hardly ever rings.
Well, part of it fits into one of the themes that because I'm 69, so I'm the same kind of the same generation of how
Mm.
we were calling ourselves the last unplugged generation. That when we're gone, we're the last generation that experienced not having the phone.
Yeah. But you know what? I mean, again, history shows that there's always been these changes, right? I mean, when I was a kid, when you were a kid, there were no ATMs. You went to the bank and you stood online, right? I did a weaving once, um, and I put in it the things that my grandfather experienced. My grandfather born in Eastern Europe, walked across Europe with his mother, then took a ship to come to the United States. And then he saw, rocket ships being invented. So look at all the changes in his lifetime, things that we might have taken for granted. Anyway, we have, even though we think we're old, we have really short lives and things change within our time period. And I mean, I'm not ignoring that AI is there. I'm just not going to personally pursue it because I don't see its relevance. But the fact that I even went to the computerized designing means I'm not adverse to new things. But if they don't feel relevant and more things are seeming as I get older less relevant, then I can leave it behind.
Right. Well, it sounds like kind of you're saying back to the base. The basics are never going to go away. We're still always going to have this urge to create.
Yeah, I think so. And, the basics are there. We have to feed ourselves, we have to clothe ourselves. Parents have to take care of their children. You know, that when you get older, death is there, that you shouldn't ignore it, that it's coming. I don't know how to prepare for it. I often say, I wish I knew the day I was going to die. Then I'd know, should I spend all my money today? We don't know those things. So you have to kind of live with the assumption you'll still be here, but also, at my age, death is a reality, that
Right.
kind of thing.
And how is that affecting your work and what you're creating? Change and death and all of that. Is that changing your work?
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. So I would say, so Suzuki Roshi wrote this book, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. And in that book, he says, everything is possible for the beginner. And when you first start, like I can remember when I first started to weave, and I certainly didn't think of myself as an artist or a teacher or anything, right? I just was learning. And I remember saying to my teacher, when she said, "What do you want to make?" And I said, "I just want to learn everything." Because I didn't have a specific thing I wanted to make. I wanted to go to the commune and I wanted someone to say to me, make a blanket. Oh, we need dish towels. Oh, and then I would know what to make. So I had to learn everything, right? As I learned and I took on more and more knowledge and more about it, that's when I started at University of Kansas. I wasn't, like I said, I didn't study there because I wanted to become an artist. I studied because I wanted to become a conservator. And then I learned that being an artist with weaving was possible. And that was so intriguing. And then I'd say my whole professional career sort of took over. I still had the sense to keep in mind what was important to me, right? So I never did anything. Like I'm not a commercial artist. I didn't do something because I tried to get money for it, right? But at this point in my life, I know that I'm sort of off the stage. I'm thrilled that you guys want to talk to me because in most days, nobody wants to talk to me anymore. Um, it's great. But at the same time, I can sort of laugh about it. And so when I go to the loom now, I'm asking myself more about, truthfully, I'm saying, how can I use up all this yarn? What can I make that can use up all this yarn? So I think that this aging has left, it's almost like I can say that I'm back at the beginner stage and I can look at my books and I can say, oh, I've always wanted to do that, but I did never had time. Now I can try that. And often I'm making just samples again. Instead of making pieces, I'm just wanting to know what is crackle. And then I do a sample of crackle, that kind of thing. So again, I think it's much more curious um, and maybe more fun because there's no end. I'm not looking to get there. I'm already there. I'm here. So,
It sounds like there's a kind of almost a purity to that, where you have the space to actually just sit with the craft, and there's no agenda. And that must be. Do you find that freeing in a way to just have that?
absolutely. Absolutely. And that's right. There's no agenda. the agenda is about understanding more. So, yes, it's great. And I do feel what a gift that I am part of a way of working that has infinite possibilities. So I will never get to the end. You know, I'll probably have to come back as a weaver again.
All right. Well, I think that's covered everything. Thank you so much for speaking with us and happy weaving and enjoy all those beautiful colors behind you.
And
Thank you.
happy
If I
birthday.
get to use them all.
Yeah.
Yes, and happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you. It's amazing. I can't believe I have reached this point. And I want to go further.
Well, they say 80's the new 60, so
Yes. Remember that, you young ones. And all of you have a wonderful conference.